The topic for this set of notes is the first 2 years of the Civil War. There's quite a bit to this, and so I'm going to go through it a little bit quickly, but realize that you can pause the video as much as needed in order to get down the notes. So we're going to start off by talking about what the strategies were for both sides, the North and the South. And we'll start with the North. Okay, as you see here from this drawing, the North strategy was called the Anaconda Plan. It was started off as kind of a silly nickname for it, but it was pretty appropriate. As I said, it was called the Anaconda Plan, and it was a strategy to win by basically following what we could consider A, B, and C. A stood for attack and capture Richmond. B for blockade the southern coast. C for cut the South in half by controlling the Mississippi River. The North also planned to rely on superior resources, meaning more men, more materials, in order to outlast the South. So one question I sometimes get is, well, why did the North have to fight the war? Why couldn't they just let the South secede? Well, they could have, but they really didn't want to for a number of different reasons. They depended on Southern cotton. Those factories in the North needed Southern cotton. They also wanted to be able to sell things to the South without worrying about tariffs. Right? If the South were another country, they might charge taxes or tariffs on goods from the North. They also didn't want a potentially unfriendly neighbor down to the South. And they were also worried that if the South broke away, another country like Britain or Spain or France perhaps might come in and take over the South. And the North did not want that to happen either. So let's move on to the South's strategy. First, rely on the strengths. The South had a lot of negatives compared to the North, but they did have some strengths. Better generals was one. Extremely dedicated fighters who were fighting on their home soil. And they had better knowledge of the land, very similar to the colonies during the American Revolution. They planned on getting help from England and France because they needed Southern cotton. So they depended on both of those countries trying to come in and help them out. And they realized they didn't have to actually win the war. They just needed to not lose it. They needed to just keep fighting until the North would give up. So let's talk about the start of the war itself and the actual breakout of fighting. We know that the first shots of the war took place at Fort Sumter in April of 1861. But the real first battle came in Virginia, and it happened with heavy fighting at a place called Manassas. And the South actually wins this first battle, the Battle of Manassas. And, both sides were confident that they would win the battle. They thought the other side would turn and run, that the war, would be over very quickly. And this battle was so deadly and so brutal on both sides that it made it very clear to both sides that this was not going to be over quickly. Early in these first couple of years, the North actually lost most of the battles and failed to capture Richmond, which was part A of the Anaconda Plan. The North started its blockade, which was part B, but it didn't have enough ships yet to blockade the entire southern coastline. In terms of part C, cutting the South in half by taking control of the Mississippi River, the North had some success there. The North sent an army into Tennessee and started winning some battles. So they were struggling in Virginia, but doing okay out in Tennessee. By September of 1862, Confederate General Robert E. Lee took a bold move to try to end the war by bringing the fight to the North. He invaded the North by taking his army into Maryland, but he failed at a place called Antietam. And the Battle of Antietam was a one-day battle and remains to this day the single bloodiest day of fighting in U.S. history. There were over 22,000 casualties on both sides, meaning killed, wounded, or missing. After this battle, President Lincoln decided to free the slaves if the South did not give up. And he wrote something called the Emancipation Proclamation. This comes right after the Battle of Antietam. Lincoln wanted to wait for a victory, and Antietam was really more of a tie, but it forced Lee back to the South. So he looked at that. Lincoln saw that as close enough to a victory and used this as a chance to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, which we'll talk about a little bit more in another set of notes coming up. So I came through this very quickly. Feel free to go back, rewatch the video, pause to get down the notes, and have them printed before our next class.